Guys of Reddit, what's an underrated struggle that's unique to being a guy? Story 1. Sometimes when I sit down on the toilet and I start peeing, the force of the stream will angle my male body part horizontally to where I expel pee in between the small gap between the toilet seat and the bowl. Cleanup is annoying because I have to spray wipe everything down all the way around the toilet. Story 2. The prostate is a deeply confusing, ticking time bomb. For one, it refers pains. When there's something wrong with your prostate, you can't really feel it in the prostate. You feel it somewhere else. Some guys get prostatitis, which is a swelling caused by a million possible different things. Tension, anxiety, bacterial issues, which you really can't assume are from hygiene faults. Prostate cancer affects 18 men. Your prostate grows with age, causing frequent urination. So at a certain age, men just start talking to each other by saying how often they wake up in the middle of the night to pee. Testicular torsion is joked about at times, but it is extremely serious when it occurs. You can accidentally have one of your balls get twisted, and the pain is so terrible that guys tend to very quickly pass out. It can just happen to you while you're sleeping randomly. Answer. Had testicular torsion when I was a teenager, 13 years old or something. My parents were divorced, and that Friday I had to go to my dad. During the school day, I felt my balls hurting like a lot, but I thought it was because my underwear was too tight. I could not muster to tell my dad because I did not want to cause problems between him and my mom. Saturday, I checked my balls because of the pain, and my left one was huge and blue. I wrote it off to puberty finally hitting and assumed my older brother had gone through the same. I eventually told him about it, and he told my dad. He looked at it Saturday evening and gave me painkillers to get through the night. Sunday, I basically spent the whole day passed out from pain or painkillers until we had to go back to my mom. Where against my wishes because I did not want to cause trouble, my brother told my mom. My mom got me to the ER immediately. They helped me quite fast and gave me a pill that would help reverse the now discovered torsion. I got an echo of my ball sack with my mom and ER doctor present to see if my balls were okay. I saw the hairbeat of my balls. Turned out that because it had been twisting the whole weekend, my left nut had partially died off, small part. I had to have surgery to remove the part that had died off a couple of weeks, months later. Can't remember exactly. I can't tell you how much pain I was in because like the previous comment said I was passing out from the pain. I could not sleep, not eat, barely move without being in extreme pain. I was sweating so much and just wanted it to end. To all the parents out there, please try and make sure your kids are okay with telling you when and where things hurt. After my surgery, a couple of months passed, and suddenly I felt it coming back. I waited for an hour before telling my mom, and we went back to the ER again. By the time we arrived, it had passed, and I was fine again, but I was not going to spend another 3 days in pure pain. Imagine being kicked in the balls really hard, but the kick never actually ends. The peak of that pain is what I had for 3 days. The doctors told me something like 20 of teenage boys get testicular torsion at some point. Crazy to think I had never heard of it before. Despite me now having like 1.72 balls, they still work fine, and I am not infertile. Just have a small scar on my sack. TLDR. Torsion of the balls sucks and hurts so fudge much. Please educate your kids about it and try to make sure they can be open about what hurts and how much. Story 3. Sitting on public toilet with a shallower bowl than usual and not noticing it until the cold, dirty internal porcelain touches my male body part head. Story 4. Less fashion options. Women have so many accessories and different types of clothing and jewelry available. In comparison, guys have so little styling potential. Answer. I think a lot of men's fashion potential has been phased out as society has moved to a more casual style. I wear a polo shirt and jeans to work, and I'm one of the more dressed up people in my office. I would love to dress like Don Draper in a 3-piece suit with a hat and fancy coat, but I would be massively overdressed and for my workplace and my city. I would love to try out cufflinks, tie bars, lapel pins, and pocket squares, but I just don't have the social settings to wear them in. I did get a mechanical watch and love it, but that's the only decent accessory I have. Story 5. Women assuming that something's wrong with you if you're single. I'm not abusive or toxic, I just have shoot luck with dating. Story 6. I think the idea that our value is derived primarily from our successes and accomplishments, not just from who we are as human beings. Men are in constant competition with each other. It can be depressing and overwhelming. Answer. I think that's common, but the sexes value different things. Jason Pargin had an excellent article about it. The crux is that who you are as a human being is completely internal and utterly subjective unless it results in actions that matter. It's like saying I'm a good person because you have sympathy and empathy for the poor, but you never actually try to help them in any practical way. We all see ourselves differently to how other people see us. Which version is correct is hard to say. We all lie to ourselves and no one knows everything about us, so it's probably somewhere in the middle. Story 7. Always being perceived as a threat even when you're just walking along a sidewalk, minding your own. I get it. Some guys give us a bad name, but most of us are far more interested in your dog than you. Answer. Way before Google Maps, I'd get lost a lot. If I needed to ask directions and the only person around was a woman, I would ask in a way that was effeminate AF. An absolute caricature of a gay man, just so they wouldn't be scared and I could find out where the absolute F I was. Always worked. You could see them visibly relax. I rarely tell this story anymore, because while I find it funny, so many people get offended F. Never on my behalf though, I've noticed. It's always something like maybe you should just not be threatening Wild that you assume she'd think you're the bad guy. How would you like it if someone pretended to be something relevant to me? Man, for a while there, I genuinely thought it was great how the generation coming after mine cared more. Now it feels like empathy is used to whet a gleeful knife. Story 8. Men don't have as much openly supportive emotional groups. It's hard to find a group for male abuse survivors or communities where guys who had trauma can share their experiences with other men who experience the same thing. It's really sad because a lot of men would be better if the social expectations of having to hold in emotions about painful experiences were gone. Story 9. If you aren't a people person, can make friends anywhere, then really no one cares apt you after reach manhood. Answer. I spent years as an emotionally stunted substances addict. Lots of isolation. Been clean for 2 years and 2 months now, and have worked my jerk off to learn healthy coping skills, regulating my own emotions, building my own community, etc. I'm in a much healthier place now, but I still have some negative narratives towards myself, still struggle to hold conversations. I feel like people assume the worst of me, and it hurts, man. But hey, never give up. Story 10. The amount of loneliness and isolation we can feel even if we have a family. It's hard sometimes to make new guy friends, but once I did, my mental has steadily improved. Bros need bros. Answer. This is so true. My wife drives my car to work since it's more gas efficient, IWFH, and our other car is bigger since we have kids, so I can use that. The car she drives has my favorite sports teams as seat covers. Have had them for over a decade. Wife has never cared they are on there. Recently learned that when she runs errands on lunch or just has that car in general, she often gets guys complimenting the teams. They are not common ones in our area and such. I think they try to have a conversation with her, but she always tells them it's her husband's car, so she doesn't really follow those teams. She was surprised to find out in the 10 years I've had the car, before we were married, I have gotten exactly 1 thumbs up from a car wash attendant when he pointed to one of the seat covers. Doesn't surprise me. I don't have boobs. I know what guys are trying to do. Other dudes, I will gladly have a short, random conversation with you on sports if you notice I'm a fan of my teams. Story 11. Single adult males can go days to weeks to months to years or longer without physical human contact. Story 12. I grew up in a family of girls. I rarely saw my dad, and he was labeled a threat by my mom a lot. This caused a sort of switch in my brain. I'm a lot more comfortable talking to women as friends than guys my age. However, being tall and alternative, a lot of people see me and immediately decide that I'm going to abuse them or try to violation them or something along those lines. When in reality, all I want us to talk about is what kind of music I listen to. Story 13. When you have problems, other men tells you to man up because it's part of life. And your girlfriends will tell you that women have it worse, so you stop whining. Story 14. The lack of commitment in coming together to protect each other. The same people who complain about women ignoring male victims of SA are also usually the same people who insult victims who come out. You probably enjoyed it. How are you so weak? As a dude, if anything happened to me, I would feel much more comfortable in telling a woman than a dude. Story 15. Having the responsibility of approaching women when there's a 95 probability for most of us, most of the time, that it will result in rejection. Answer, compound that with how much more harsh rejections have become, and I totally understand why younger men are kind of checking out of the dating scene. I'm a bit older, and I remember the phrase, just ask her out. The worst thing she can say is no. Unfortunately, a simple no seems to be getting rarer and rarer these days. It seems to have transitioned to reject him, but be at least a little mean about it. Story 16. I'm 42 and work for a bank. I want to bleach my hair and do some nice platinum or similar, totally not crazy color, but it will be considered as a midlife crisis or maybe even totally inappropriate. I got myself a gravel bike recently to get more physical activity. Nope, it's a midlife crisis according to everyone. Story 17, limited work dress clothes options, suity, dress slacks blazer, dress shoes, button-down shirt. There's some wiggle room in more casual offices, but often dress clothes, professional clothes are heavy, often require wearing undershirts so you don't sweat through your dress shirt, or other such layering under shirt, dress shirt, jacket, cinched neck W tie. But it's not uncommon to see women in outfits where their arms are exposed, armpits are out, or have flowy fabrics or dresses, skirts with movement, open collars, exposed necklines. Story 18. Double standards for conduct in relationships. Men straight up get verbally or physically abused regularly, and it isn't seen as a big deal. But if the roles were reversed, everyone would rightfully be crying abuse. Story 19. That society sees you as wholly disposable and discards you the moment they don't have a use for you. See also, how many homeless men do you drive or walk past and don't give them a second thought ever? Answer, yeah, there was a post a little while ago asking whether or not we agree with injured U.S. veterans receiving financial help from their country for the remainder of their lives. I was surprised to see how many folks didn't agree with it. Most of them didn't even agree that they get any compensation. There are over 800 billionaires and 23.8 million millionaires in that country, and they collectively disagree with vets receiving compensation that isn't even a livable amount. That's absolutely fudge to me. We are collectively psycho towards men. I know there are woman vets out there, but I'm sure I don't have to argue the demographic. Story 20. When the baby in your hand searches for breast milk and you don't have any. Either that or sitting on your left nut and crushing it, and nobody knows why your eyes are moist. Story 21. The fudge nerve. There's an assumption that because I'm a man, I can manage things. What if I can't? I totally can. Story 22. In 511-215, black. If I see a woman walking towards me on the street, or if I'm walking towards a woman on the street, I cross it or walk in the street, especially if I'm with my absolute sweetheart of a dog or a knight. I don't want to make some random person uncomfortable with my presence. I don't consider it a reflection on me, but I'm not blind to optics. What about this Answer. Size and race aside, my mother always taught my brother growing up that if you're a man, walking behind a woman at night, just cross the street because it will give her a sense of relief, even if you're a good guy. So as a woman, I appreciate that any man, regardless of race, age, or size, moves to give a little peace of mind. I live in a major city with whack jobs and creeps everywhere. So any momentary break from being on high alert is good for my cortisone levels. I imagine it for you sucks, but I appreciate men like you who are conscious of our surroundings. Story 23. Would say emotional invisibility. Society expects men to just deal with it and not talk about feelings. So even when something hits hard, you're supposed to shrug it off. It's lonely and exhausting. Story 24. The everlasting thought that if one thing goes wrong, you can lose everything quicker than you got it. Story 25. I have been suffering from many things lately, something I haven't told my family. One day I started to cry in front of my mom about my job, life, etc. She told me men don't cry, son. I know she loves me a lot, but sometimes it's hard to be a man. Answer. I feel you, man. That really must have hurt coming from your mom. Just so it's clear, it's healthy for boysmen to cry, but it's not always safe to do, depending on who is nearby. I cry sometimes because it helps, but I tend to do so alone. I find it hard to cry in front of my son. Even though I understand it is healthy for him to see, it is just so hard to undo the programming of all the people throughout your life that tell you boysmen don't cry. Story 26. Given the number of answers or some variation of balls you guys really need to demand some better underwear. Story 27. I'm not a man, but I was having a conversation with my coworker friend about our mental health struggles, and I asked him if he's thought about going to therapy. He jokingly told me, men don't do that. But I feel like there was a lot of truth in that statement. Men are seemingly too ashamed to ask for help. You're not weak for struggling, especially with the world being the way it is these days. Just made me a little sad to hear him say that so casually. Story 28. Being stuck in a mundane job with the crushing responsibility of providing for a family, all while wishing to be called off to die in a foreign war, just to give meaning to your existence. Story 29. Emo. Listening to media what a guy should be. 6 feet, 6-pack, and 6-figure income. I don't do any of that, but I have a lil sis who tells me I could make a girl happy. Does it make sense? Answer. I felt like the vast majority of marketing targeted towards males is telling the audience that they need to fit into a narrow range of archetypes in order to meet the definition of a man. It's insulting, but clearly pretty effective. I also believe it is resulting in a chunk of contemporary men just acting out a trope instead of looking within to determine who they are. Story 30. He's X. He'll figure it out. Well, thank you. I will cause I have to. Some support would still be nice instead of justifying shoot behavior like this. Story 31. I think one of the most underrated struggles is how guys build friendships compared to women. I'm a 63 athletic, extroverted dude who loves meeting people and talking to new people. But something I've noticed since I was a teenager is that most guys stick with the same few friends they had since high school, or they just keep friendships surface level forever. Meanwhile, women seem to be able to form these deep, meaningful connections, even with people they just met. Story 32. Getting your male body part entangled in your underwear in public without looking like you're jerking off. Story 33. The ubiquity of rejection. We guys are rejected by those women who don't find us attractive. Naturally, that's fair. We're also rejected by women who, it turns out, did actually find us attractive after all. We can be rejected by women who asked for a certain kind of treatment and, when we gave it to them, rejected us. We can even be preemptively rejected by women in certain situations where they want to make it clear they're not interested in advance of any interest whatsoever being shown. I've seen women's magazines where rejection is turned into a sassy game. If a man tries to break the ice using these methods, then here's a list of perfect sassy replies. There is no corollary in men's magazines for that sort of thing. Women also keep saying they want equality, but if you genuinely treat women as equals, there are very few faster ways to get rejected. And then, after a lifetime of men being honed for rejection and treated as expendable from about high school onwards, women overwhelmingly insist that they want the man to make the first move. Story 34. Being lashed out at and verbally abused, slapped, randomly groped by girls are all weirdly socially acceptable. Story 35. Women often say they have to bear the mental load of a relationship. We agree, but we bear the load of emotional suppression. Some of you will chime in saying things like, we want you to be vulnerable, but you don't. Most men know the feeling of finally being able to speak of your problems only to have that conversation turn around and have us comfort you, or you use it against us. We have to stay quiet, despite you being convinced you are a good shoulder, a haven, a reprieve. The moment you shut us down and make us apologize for how we feel, you'll never have us open again. We'll manage the pain on our own instead of adding the weight of your feelings. Story 36. Being trans is great sometimes because I have experiences from both worlds, and my own special one because transphobes exist. Y'all don't stick up for each other or say nice things like that was crazy figuring out and being okay with. Story 37. Around 40, your balls start being a real liability as a side sleeper or someone who tosses and turns all night. Story 38. Hiding boners, but virtually every woman on the planet assumes that you having a boner means you're horny. I remember my parents waking me up in high school, sleeping in my boxers, and having to wait for my parents to leave the room to move the covers. Unfortunately, this led to many arguments as they thought I was trying to get back to sleep. I can't say I never was trying to get back to sleep, but it's definitely the case I didn't want them to see me tenting. Story 39. Having ridiculous expectations placed upon us. It is far easier, as far as finding life partners and the judgments of society go, to be a weak woman than a weak and successful man. There is a reason tragic end rates are significantly higher for men. Not saying the above is the only reason, but it is relevant. Story 40. I'll do one that's not genital related. Walking behind a woman to get where you are trying to go. You know she's wondering if you're following her on purpose, and there's no good way of letting her know you're not following her. To be fair, though, the women have it much worse in this scenario, trying to figure out if she's being followed. But the experience is definitely unique for both genders. Story 41. Us guys don't really get hints when girls flirt with us. Like, we'll stand there wondering if they're being really nice or being flirtatious. But we'll never chase up on it, or we just won't pick up on the flirting. We'll stand there oblivious to them flirting to us. Another point. We're not flirting with women. 9 times out of 10, we're being nice and friendly. I do not want to get into your pants. But even if we are flirting, we make it obvious. Answer, I've had this weirdest thing this year where when I've been interacting with girls I'm friendly with, but absolutely, solidly not making a move on, they were really drawn into me or were certain I was making a move. One girl who I was closest to and most comfortable with ironically thought I was crossing lines, told her BF, who I was cool with, and demanded I apologize to him. It was ridiculous, but she'd already poisoned water with her misperception, so I did just to neutralize things and then effectively cut her off. There was another girl who I'd messed around with before, but put all that away when she previously wanted a relationship. She moved way too quick and was way too different from me, and now has a BF. So now I'm way more comfortable being myself since nothing's on the table anymore. Just this week, she tells me she's confused because she thinks I'm flirting with her, even though we ended things a while ago. I had to clear that up a couple days ago. And yet, with other girls that I actually want, it's like the instant I really start trying to flirt with them, they almost immediately turn off. Left on red, fade out, slow ghosting. I feel like Tantalus out here. And also like I'd need to be almost manipulatively strategic to actually get a girl these days. Whether it's a relationship or a hookup, it's the weirdest dilemma. Story 42. During a breakup, even if she's the problem, people tend to flock to her aid, and you're left dealing with the trauma by yourself. Story 43. Men on average get a 63 or more longer jail sentence because they are seen as dangerous and the judges are biased. Story 44. Being expected to make the first move and to always lead in today's world. I don't know what I'm doing just as much as anybody else. Now I have to make decisions for everybody. Also, making friends if you're not a bro is kind of hard. Story 45. General expectation of responsibility and accountability. It's seldom mentioned, almost never discussed, but I notice it all the time. And it blows my mind how much women can not care and get away with or delegate it to the nearest man to take care of. This holds true as a general baseline attitude with which one faces the world, not necessarily specific instances. It shows both in dealing with situations or emotions. I think it's the other side of the double-edged sword where lots of things women do and say aren't taken as seriously as a man if he were to say or do the exact same thing. Story 46. Not to beat a dead horse, but being expected to initiate everything in terms of dating is a serious struggle, especially for introverted men. Story 47. Walking home from a 13-hour shift to then see a lass walking slower than a sloth on heroin perceive you as some sort of mass takedown rapist because you happen to be walking the same way home and you're walking rather quickly because I want to get home and crack a cold one. This then makes you uncomfortable, so you either have to find somewhere to sit down and let her pass or find a different route home, which takes an extra 40 minutes. Recently, I've just started not giving a darn and waiting until I get close and just politely saying, "Excuse me, love, do you mind if I just jump ahead?" The look of confusion as they realize I'm not actually there to take down them and just simply want to go home is always quite something. I know it seems heartless, but to be honest, if you've been in a kitchen for that long, I really don't care about your feelings. I simply want to go home. The media has made everyone think the worst of everybody. Story 48. Not being able to take a young child, their own or nephew-niece, to the park or many places while alone. Not being able to hang out at a park alone. Story 49. The lack of care for men's well-being. It's not kind of trendy to acknowledge it, but it's still underrated, particularly because much of it's performative. I recently got really sick, resulting in a lifelong chronic illness diagnosis, and the disgust shown towards me for being out of commission for a few months while I got it figured out floored me. I thought that wasn't a real phenomenon, or that it was exaggerated, or that we've progressed past that, but no, society does not care about men if they're not useful. Story 50. If you don't make enough money to support a family on your own, you're seen as all but worthless to the vast majority of the dating pool. If you work with kids, people assume you're some kind of creep. If you bring up problems, you're either ignored or told to get over it. In general, men are judged by what they can give other people materially. Story 51. I'm going to say how common and acceptable it is to make fun of serious issues. Stuff like baldness, erectile dysfunction, unemployment, etc. are serious things that can affect a guy's physical and mental health, but they're often just treated as punchlines worthy of derision. Story 52. Quiet desperation leading to depression, leading to tragic end. By being shamed for expressing any feelings to the opposite intimacy. Story 53. My dad once brought up the fact that he and many men he knows and is friends with actually do have dream wedding ideas, but since the day is about the bride, they never get to share them, or when they do, they're often told to just let her do her thing. And I feel that's a shame that men feel that they can't have an input on a day that's special and about both the bride and groom simply because traditionally only the bride cares. Story 54. People expect you not to cry. If you cry, it means you are weak. I actually struggle with this sometime, TBH. Story 55. For boys growing up in left-leaning circles, the cultural consensus that masculinity either does not exist or is inherently toxic. Answer: I think this depends on the circle. I grew up kinda redneck, but a lot of my friends and myself have become more leftist than anything else. We subscribe to the Nick Offerman brand of masculinity, which I would argue is very healthy. It's nice to see my friends' boys growing up doing the same stuff we did, building forts and sick jumps for their bikes, while not believing any of that Andrew Tate garbage of women are property and real men don't have feelings. Story 56. Meine Worki. If you like feminine things, you're set to be cataloged as gay by others, or doing those things to be close to girls, aka a creep. I like to dance, have my nails trimmed, go to Zumba classes, do yoga, stretching classes, go to a coffee shop and talk for hours about your day, week, your feelings, etc. It's rare to see men in those environments, and when you see one, they would last for a couple of days before leaving, as they felt pressured by the amount of women in those spaces and that they may feel like creeps. I won't deny that there are weirdos that take those spaces to look at their bodies or make shoot comments. Sometimes it feels lonely to be the only men in those spaces. And, well, I don't know much about men things like cars, bikes, sports, which makes it hard for me to get male friendship and easier for females ones. So there's that too, Lo. I guess I need to get out of my comfort zone. Story 57. That I don't feel like I'm desired or worthy of being cherished like women are. You see so much shoot about how a man should treat his woman partner, but nothing about the reverse. Story 58. Listen to trans men's experiences. They make it sound like being a guy, terrible, being treated like a monster when I began to pass. Like, darn, it's not that bad, right? Shoot. Story 59. Toilet water and toilet bowls being the coldest and most unsanitary surfaces, but you still need to sit down for half your business. Someone else stole the balls one. Story 60. Knowing that you have to make the move if you want it to go from platonic to romantic and all the risks that entails. Story 61. Don't know if it's underrated, but no one ever tells you, good job, well done, you look good, or I'm proud of you. Maybe a yay kid if you had a good home, but not after the age of 20. Story 62. Being mocked for liking things. Is it somehow more manly to be void of interests, wants, likes, and hobbies? Story 63. I'm just trying to get somewhere. I have no interest in you. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just trying to move. It might be BC. I'm autistic that I just can't wrap my head around the whole walk this way and that way around a lady, so you don't scare her, cause you're a guy, bro. I just gotta walk. Story 64. Yeah, don't like the bear over a man topic. Got treated like I was about to commit a crime parking downtown and asking a woman if this is free parking during these hours. Women, stop projecting your fears onto fudge regular interactions. Your mental health isn't your fault, but it's your responsibility. Story 65. In the USA, at least, infant genital mutilation with no support and constant gaslighting from medical professionals. Story 66. The fact that half of all domestic abuse victims are men and near half of all violation victims are men, and yet male victims are almost completely erased from any conversation about domestic abuse and violation. In 2014, slightly more men, 4.2, than women, 3.5, reported being victims of spousal violence during the preceding 5 years. This translated into about 342,000 women and 418,000 men across the provinces. For example, in 2011, the CDC reported results from the National Intimate Partner and Intimacy Violence Survey, NISVS, one of the most comprehensive surveys of intimacy victimization conducted in the United States to date. The survey found that men and women had a similar prevalence of non-consensual intimacy in the previous 12 months, 1.270 million women and 1.267 million men. This remarkable finding challenges stereotypical assumptions about the gender of victims of intimacy violence. However, unintentionally, the CDC's publications and the media coverage that followed instead highlighted female intimacy victimization, reinforcing public perceptions that intimacy victimization is primarily a women's issue. To this day, it is still legally impossible for a woman to violation a man in the UK. In the US, a woman can violation a man, impregnate herself, give birth, and sue the man she violation for the child she violation out of him, and he will have to pay child support or go to jail. And somehow sexist air conditioning and blind auditions for orchestra receives more attention than all these men's issues combined. Story 67. I will say as a preface, this is not every man or woman, But we all acknowledge there are toxic people, both men and women in the world, and that is what this is about. Not every man or woman acts abusively. Because men's makeup, raising your voice makes you the suspect and hostile, research indicates that women tend to engage in more indirect forms of aggression, such as spreading rumors or using verbal insults, compared to men who may display more direct physical aggression. This suggests that destructive verbal behaviors can be more common among women in certain contexts. Source: so think about the dynamics if verbal abuse was a felony offense. Many times verbal abuse is what sets men off with aggression. Sure, men could escalate and seem like the aggressor, but many times women are the inciter. It's just from an outsider's perspective, witnesses, do men seem like the perpetrator. Because men raise their voice and get loud, it is easier for people to get away with bad behavior if done quietly. So, if the outsiders only see the man getting mad, that's all they know. Even though before that something was said to cause that reaction response, effect. So what is the answer for men? Don't react, respond. If a woman feels like making verbally destructive rather than positive and constructive remarks, let them be destructive to themselves. Don't react, respond because you're the big fish getting tricked and hooked. You're then grilled in public and everyone sees that. Instead of taking the bait and falling for their destructive verbal remarks, don't react. Let others see, so the only thing they destroy is their own self-image, not yours. The destructive behavior did not originate from you. It's not yours. Keep it that way. Story 68. Society in general showing little or no regard towards men's mental state and the effect it has on our lives. Story 69. Lighthearted answer. When you go to pee, if anything is blocking the male body part hole, anything at all, it causes the stream to rocket out in two completely different directions, neither of which wind up hitting the toilet bowl. It was so frustrating because you could have perfect aim, but imperfect luck, and all of a sudden you have to wipe down every surface near your toilet. Serious answer, it can be really hard to feel distrusted all the time. Because a lot of men can be extreme assholes or actually evil, a lot of women are on edge around men. I'm sure you've heard the example of a woman walking alone at night and a man walking behind her. It could be a coincidence, or he could be a serial killer. And since you obviously don't want to run the risk, you treat him as the potential serial killer. I'm not saying this is a bad thing, I get it. I can only imagine how scary and anxious it must be. But as a guy who's been on the receiving end of that kind of caution, it makes you feel really bad about yourself. You start to think, what is it about me that makes people so cautious around me? Or did I say do something that made them think I was dangerous? It's a problem that I fear can't ever really be solved because there are always evil men out there. It's unfortunate, but it's something you have to get used to as a man. Story 70. Everyone expects that they can just treat me like shoot and I'll be fine because men don't have feelings. Look, 90 of the time, I don't really give a shoot what you're saying about me or what you think about me. 10 of the time, I'm also a fellow human and God darn it, just leave me alone. Story 71. If you're uncircumcised and you don't pull back the skin enough when you piss, there's a good chance it'll drop straight down at the same time as arching normally. Also, even if you are circumcised or do pull the skin back enough, sometimes your male body part just wants to stupid and piss to the side. Story 72. Walking behind a girl at night, but you don't want to come across as a stalking creep, so you decide to overtake, only to notice that she starts walking faster and faster as you attempt to do so. Story 73. Not sharing your feelings on the not perfect parts of your life with others. You know there are issues, and if your workarounds still aren't enough, the feelings when others point it out, and still coming up short when others mention it is not good. Not strictly a guy thing, but then again, I'm an old dude, and when was coming up stoic was the way it was for guys. Life is the evolving process. Story 74. It used to be having people watch me when I pass through a park, pass a school, or simply have the cheek to walk anywhere a woman might be at night. Not now, though, because I know I ain't a threat, so know my problem to deal with as I've got shoot to go do. Story 75. Balls are either sticking to your leg, pinched in the crotch of your undies, or itch. Yet men, for the most part, ignore all of that, to the point they need to adjust, often without much conscious thought. Story 76. When I'm peeing, but then it streams two ways. One is fine, but the other goes to the floor. Doesn't happen all the time, but I'm being genuine. Story 77. As someone who is queer and generally seen as feminine, to the point I'm mistaken as a woman sometimes, it isn't approaching women, but being seen beyond the gay friend personally. While my group of friends is all about jokes and we are all very dumb queers, Only a select few straight friends past coworkers would be like that. It feels weird. Story 78. The yearning of wanting to throw a rock into a lake from a high location, only to realize that I have other responsibilities I must attend to. Story 79. When you go to a pub in England wearing shorts and it has the old trough urinal, and when you take a piss, you can feel your other guy's piss spraying onto your legs' feet. Story 80. Crazy how men can just be living life normally, and then bam, random body part decides to roll the dice on extreme pain mode, makes you realize how fragile we actually are. Story 81. Dealing with being low testosterone. Until I got supplements at 26, I never realized just how different it can be to be a man, but barely have any testosterone. Muscle growth, diet, and dating got so much better. Story 82. Flirting for the love of it without meaning more. Women do it all the time, and it is nice and even an ego boost. Ayada. If I tell you how pretty you are but don't want to go on a date. Story 83. Not being able to cry. I'm a pretty open person, and I talk about my struggles with people, but I haven't cried in front of another person for 18 years. With a single exception in front of my girlfriend 3 years back. I know many guys who are like me and can't even cry when they are alone. Story 84. Society being overwhelmingly indifferent to the vast majority of us. Even me simply bringing that up has a high chance of people attacking me for it. We're not allowed to have society's attention unless it's in a negative light, and our genuine issues go largely unaddressed and unnoticed. Story 85. Testosterone deficiency, a massive problem that is often written off under the veil of depression. So many guys get put on antidepressants when what they need is TRT. That's a small part of it, but there is a massive lifestyle, medical, environmental basis in the modern day for this. Story 86. The delicacy of the testicles is not to be disrespected. I still can't believe NFL players raw dog it. Story 87. Ma ferdie at this one. Sometimes I try to talk to my friends about the things I go out of my way to do for them because I care about what makes them happy and how I wish sometimes I could have that same respect reciprocated back to me. It never happens, or I wouldn't bring it up. And dudes are so against talking about any type of feelings that they instead call me a narcissist or tell me the way I feel isn't a big deal to them, or they will say, you're acting like a girlfriend not getting enough attention. But it's like, dude, why TF are we even friends if all you want to do is insult me and live with the expectation that we will be friends for no real reason? We don't do anything enjoyable together. You don't treat me with respect that I want or deserve, and then act like I'm the bad guy for wanting better for myself. It's a constant struggle to meet any guy friends as a guy who actually care about each other, instead of playing this stupid distant game that everyone knows. The most annoying part about that stupid game is friends like that will find a girl and change their whole lives around her, dumping all the friends they used to talk to. And for some reason, this isn't frowned upon. BC, most dudes have friendships. They just expect to remain friendships with no effort, no respect, no boundaries. So everything goes and nothing can be frowned upon. It's genuinely the most isolating thing about being a dude, not being allowed to have an issue or talk about it BC rather than talk about the issue. Dudes have this tendency to frown on anyone bringing up a problem rather than the problem itself. Story 88. Honestly, as a middle-aged man, most friends have moved away or gotten busy. It's just hard to find friends to grab a beer with after work anymore. Story 89. Getting random arousal for no apparent reason. This decreases over time, but it can still happen. Like Ron Burgundy in the scene where Veronica Corningstone notices a massive arousal on Ron. Story 90. Knowing that you don't belong and Noon wants you besides your family unless you're over 6'2" and Jack. Story 91. As a woman, I agree. I realized I do this, and since I realized it, I try to really listen and to not turn it around so that the man ends up having to comfort me again. Story 92. You have to consistently worry about not being seen as a creep or pervert and that your actions are in no way untoward. Story 93. When your male body part or balls or both are sitting uncomfortably to the point of pain or even just mild discomfort, but God forbid I quickly adjust myself through clothing no flashing in public to alleviate the discomfort or pain. Guess I'll just suffer. Story 94. Being short, I am dead average height and I dislike to be any shorter because the way women look at and talk about short men is degrading as hell. Often the complaint with short men is no, it's not because they are short, but because they lack confidence. And it's like, yeah, they lack confidence because women won't shut up about how important height is and put ridiculous height requirements in their Tinder bio and won't even talk to men under a certain height. So yeah, duh, short men will be insecure because they are constantly ridiculed and talked about like a lesser being that no woman would ever want to be with. So to any women out there, please stop being so mean to short kings so that they don't have to call themselves kings to make up for being short. Just think even Fiona would rather marry an ogre than a short guy. Even a super rich royal short guy, the gross green monster, is more attractive. Story 95. I get pretty tired of hearing why I'm awful just because I was born with a wiener. The hypocrisy gets too much. I don't dislike anyone, but people dislike men for being men. It's not right, and nobody cares. Story 96. My male body part is hard even when I'm not horny sometimes. It's more common when we're in our teens, but still does happen some use fully grown adults. Morning wood be a common example. Story 97. When the tip of your male body part touches the water in the toilet bowl, dislike when that happens. Story 98. Not a man, but something I've seen and probably upsets a lot of men because my guy friend has mentioned it in passing before. Only having mental health issues and male violation, brought up in a way to discredit and downplay other people's experiences. Issues are often not addressed genuinely, but in a ha-ha, I'm better than you. A friend told me that he was tired of only hearing men's Mental Health Month brought up as a way to say something nasty about Pride Month. And yeah, I imagine rarely having issues discussed genuinely is not only infuriating, but hurtful. Story 99. The sunk of Titanic was most deadly for young, healthy, poor guys. Not the same, but looks like the majority of the population is women, elders, childs, and disables. So I lost hours in queues to let others through, be stranded in public transport stops, even when I was the first to arrive there, when there is only a few places available. Do care to even try sit in those when almost full, even if it is for long journeys. If was Jack the first get on the door, the chances for him and Rose's survival were huge. Story 100. Only being interacted with if someone needs you to do something. I work a manufacturing job where I'm the sole person in a department that in order for 4 other people's machines to run, they need what I make. I will go weeks before someone asks me about my weekend or how I'm doing. Story 101. Kissing the homies goodnight. It becomes increasingly challenging when they live in multiple states. Story 102. It's socially acceptable for a woman to have a good cry or be all over the place because of hormones, but a guy is expected to not show weakness or vulnerability or insecurity, and guys are punished heavily for it, even if people say otherwise. Story 103. The toilet in my college apartment is so small that if my male body part is anything more than cold and its shortest, it will not fit on the inside of the bowl. Story 104. It's been years since someone has given me a compliment, and the only time I can ever think of a woman I don't know talking to me was the one who sat next to me at a wrestling show. Story 105. A lot of women assume we are threats super interested of them, just bees. They are women. BC, some guys give us bad reputation. No, we just mind our own business. Story 106. Having to suffer the unconscious gendered bias of teachers throughout all of elementary and middle school who are overwhelmingly women. Story 107. No one cares about you. I was lucky enough to have parents that cared about me, and now that they are both passed, no one really does. My dad always understood. My mother not so much, but she cared about me. To my wife, I am just a paycheck in the end. Story 108. Having to deal with every 6 minutes or so, somebody posts a question about what's an underrated struggle or what don't women know about being a man? That's a pretty underrated struggle right there. Story 109. People genuinely caring about your happiness only after you proved yourself or did something for them. Family excluded. Being denigrated by default for your sexuality, not just after fudge around recklessly. Your own individual perspective on your feelings mattering less than other people's generic cliches. Having to justify yourself for wanting intimacy. Being punished for opening up, although it's allegedly appreciated, and then being gaslighted that the way was the problem or whatever. Story 110. The vast majority of violent crime is done by men. To men. The vast majority of takedown are done by men. To men. The ratio goes up even more when we're talking about street violence, even more when it's someone you don't know. And then my girlfriend is scared to walk home alone at night because as a woman, it would be too dangerous. Story 111. If you get just a little too aggressive scratching your ballsack, you are in for like 2 minutes of blinding agony. Story 112. If it's a particularly hot day sometimes when you sit down on the toilet, your balls can touch the water. Story 113. My partner can tell me how she's unhappy with me and work on it. I tell my partner how unhappy she makes me. It's my fault. I plan a whole year of vacation time off to spend with them. She books over all of it, and I'm insensitive to her needs. I was going to take the family camping. Now she's going to Florida by herself. TikTok, Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, all the very bane of humanity. Story 114. Having to take the responsibility because it makes you noble. And in the end, you are denying to yourself that you want out because you have been struggling to keep it together. Even if you can't just leave it all behind. You're a man. Story 115. Random women texting me all day and night asking how my day is going and wanting to bring me food and cuddle in the shower. These meanie are running me dry. Story 116. To older generations, I'm not allowed to show emotions. To younger, I'm expected to. Like guys, I cry when Littlefoot's mom dies. I cry, but I don't do it all the time. Story 117. Not being able to articulate feelings well, and as a result, not dealing with feeling inadequate or like a failure a lot. Story 118. Not being able to openly weep or laugh or feel joy when watching a Hallmark movie. Oh, and no ladies' night. Story 119. The fact that we are often judged by what we earn. I was given notice at my job, and I already see the effects with those around me. I am nearly invisible at work, pitied by some, and looked down by others. Intimacy is gone too. I feel incredibly alone. And that's something that is often overlooked in men. Story 120. I'm not saying that loneliness is gendered, but I do think that men experience it in a different way, largely because men struggle to support other men. Due to the hardships that women experience in day-to-day lives, my observation is that women do a much better job of providing support to other women as it seems more necessary. It took me a good portion of my life to find supportive friends in men. Even still, communication is a huge barrier, as myself and the other men around me have trouble with the vocabulary needed to talk about these things. It's often just stuff I was either never taught to say, or even more so taught to never say. Story 121. In all seriousness, who approved of smaller crotches in men's pants? Fudge low-rise jeans? He'd like to wear my pants at my waist and not have to walk around with some version of a front wedgie or male camel toe. Make the zippers long again. Story 122. The realization that no matter what a man feels, experiences, accomplishes, or does, it never adds up to what a woman goes through every day before noon. Story 123. Having to deal with liberals and modern feminism telling you how evil you are while they live comfortably in a world we built. Story 124. When I walk quickly up or down some stairs, my male body part slaps onto my legs and does that clap sound. Story 125. The sheer amount of rejection guys go through with dating. I truly don't think any woman can honestly understand it. Story 126. People assuming you aren't happy or content, and the constant advice, unsolicited advice about attracting women. Story 127. The world, both low-key and high-key, expects you to shoulder and lift the problems they don't want to deal with. Story 128. When the toilet is badly designed, so when you sit down, your trouser snake physically interacts with the abhorrent porcelain structure. Story 129. Can't really play with your children at a playground while not being looked at as a potential pedophile. Same with working with children, like daycare or swimming coach. Story 130. Watching adult content as a preteen and developing a lifelong addiction to it to mask mother issues, ejaculating way too much over decades, living a life of apathy, depression, and fatigue. Story 131. Being forced to only have 4 days a month and 4 nights a month with your child because of the stupid divorce laws